check out what I got in my grubby little hands today. That's right. Is the Fighting Commander Octa. Beautiful, beautiful. I've waited for you for so long. This is an Xbox controller, obviously it'll work for PC as well. Here's the D-pad, the 6-button layout. Okay, I see. So the face buttons are micro switches, so we'll check that out. And of course there's an analog stick that's added to this, which is going to be useful. Headphone jack. So with the stick you have the option for the left and right sticks. And then we have the software here to program the buttons. So we'll check that out. What do you say we crack this bad boy open? Man, I'm so excited. Alright, here we go. Ooh. Oh man, the suspense. I can't wait. Alright, a quick start guide. And here it is. Oh yes. Let's test the face buttons. The face buttons are obviously very clicky, as you heard. I guess this is what they mean by micro switches. It sounds like it's exactly the same as the mouse clicks. Right, and the travel is very short, right? So you'll be able to execute commands really quickly. I like that. Yeah, so initial impressions, the face buttons feels very good. I like it a lot. And in terms of how it feels in your hand, this is a very light controller actually. I don't think there's any rumbles on here. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's pretty light. However, that doesn't mean it's cheap. The plastic feels very high quality, right? It just doesn't feel like there's any motors in there. And in terms of the size, it's not a huge controller. So here it is comparing to my Xbox Series controller. So this one is a little wider but thinner. So kind of like a PlayStation type of controller. Alright, speaking of which, there you go. Yeah, so it's about the same size as a PlayStation 5 controller, but it's a little thinner up here. And it kind of curves in. Whereas this handle here on the PS5 kind of curves in, but not as much as this controller right here. Because it kind of curves in this way, you see there's a bend. You see that? So I wonder how comfortable it'll be. Whereas with my Xbox controller, there's absolutely no bend at all at the wrist. Let's see how the stick feel. Very interesting. Kind of reminds me of the N64 controller with these cutouts. Alright, this will make it easier if you want to play with the joystick. You know, you can do your diagonal and there'll be like a little groove to catch the stick, right? In terms of the height of the stick, it seems like it's about the same as the PS5 and the Xbox controller. So you can't go as far, which I like a lot. You see how my thumb kind of stretches all the way? Kind of extends all the way. But with this stick, it doesn't. You see that? There's still a little bit of give here. So the travel is a lot shorter. I guess this will make it easier to do circular motions. Let's get to the D-pad. The D-pad doesn't have the same feel as the buttons. It's a clicky mush, if that makes sense. There is a little bit of a click, but it feels like it's rubberized. You know what has me worried about is the circular shape of this. So I'm not sure how is it gonna do with diagonals, and we'll test it out. And I don't think this is a floating D-pad. Now with my M30, this is a floating D-pad right here, right? You can see how it kind of rotates, right? But this one, I don't think is a floating D-pad. I think this one is similar to the Xbox controller, where it's circular, but underneath here, there are 4 metal switches. Whereas this one, it kind of acts like a joystick, right? Initial impressions on the D-pad, it feels good. I like that the D-pad is on the smaller side, so that way it's easier for you to go diagonals, right? Whereas with the PlayStation, is too far apart, right, to press 2 buttons at the same time. Yeah, definitely similar to the size of the Xbox controller in terms of the D-pad. Alright, so far so good, but you won't know until you test it out in game. Now let's get over to the shoulder buttons. This is a gigantic button. The shoulder buttons are clicky and tactile. So for this big lower shoulder button, you can only press this one way, which is this side. This side does not press in. You see that? You can go pretty far and still be able to press it, but mainly you'll be pressing it with your knuckles here. And now I understand why it's so big, is because it's kind of anchored over here. What you need is just press it right here, right? And your finger, your index finger, is not going to go all the way here, so I don't see that as an issue. On the upper shoulder button, you can press it both ways. To be honest with you, I kind of wish that they're both like this. This controller is designed for the Xbox Series consoles, so it's got the share button right here and some audio controls. There is a file button, so maybe that is for profiles. So this is a wire controller, obviously, and wire is the way to go. It's got the least input lag, and the cable seems plenty long enough. And check this out, I have not seen this in a long time. Breakaway cables. Look at that. That's so cool. That's a trip down memory lane. What do you say we plug this bad boy in and take it for a test drive? Alrighty, I've booted up Street Fighter V here on PC, so let's see. Let's go into training. Alright, just to be upfront, I'm not an expert Street Fighter or anything. If anything, I'm a newbie at best, right? I'm just a casual Street Fighter player. I'm more of a DOA guy. The reason why I booted up Street Fighter is because this controller really is designed for Street Fighter with a 6-button layout, right? So immediately I noticed that the D-pad is pretty heavy in all directions. Yeah, there's a lot of resistance. But I will say this, it's very responsive. The face buttons. Man. Yeah, oh my god, the face buttons feel so good. Yeah, they're light and tactile. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the original Xbox controller S. And that D-pad. That D-pad is pretty heavy to press too. I'm just a little concerned that because you have to use a lot of force, that your finger's gonna be in a lot of pain over long periods of time. Alright. No problem there. Yeah. Okay. This shoulder button feels really good. And this one too, actually. You see how I'm able to press it fully extended, right? I don't have to put my index finger at awkward position to switch between the two. In the space here, they've reduced the space between the two buttons quite considerably since the Fighting Commander. So I like that change. Yeah, and I have no concern about this little anchor here because it's way down here. You're not going to be able to reach it anyways, right? So your natural finger position will be like right here. Even if you use the tip of your finger to press these buttons, you're not going to have any problem at all. Same thing over here. They're pretty relatively easy to press. I like it. Let's test the circular motion here. Alright, so the surface here is a little rough. In order for me to go from one end to the other, it just takes a lot of effort actually. It's not smooth. So the plastic that's being used here is the same. Yeah, it's the same as the one on the controller body itself. I wish they had used like a smoother plastic here. And as you can see here, it's a little sandy, right? As opposed to the PlayStation controller, you see how the buttons uses very smooth plastic, so you can slide between these really easily. Maybe over time it'll get better or you get used to it, but initial impression is it's kind of hard for me to slide like this. I think it's gonna be a little rough with like full circles and half circles. The way I use my D-pad is I slide my finger around, right? I slide around. Maybe you can just kind of rotate it. Let's see. Yeah, this D-pad is probably good if you are a player who kind of rotate your thumb like this instead of a slider. I'm more of a slider as opposed to a rotator, right? Did I just make up a term? Yeah, this motion right here is a lot easier to do, right, than to do it backwards like this. Let me take it off camera and see, because the way I'm holding this control in front of the camera is pretty uncomfortable. Yeah, it's still very difficult to do. Yep, so this is forward, as you can see on the left side of the screen, right? But when I try to do the other direction, I can't get it, because the surface of the D-pad is very rough. The surface here, particularly down here, okay, when I go this way is fine, but on the way up, it just catches the surface right here of the D-pad, and I'm unable to go all the way up here. There's a lot of resistance. Like, I'm not sure if you can hear this, but look at the way my thumb slide over the D-pad, right? You see that? It's very rough. It's even rougher backwards. Next to impossible. If only they had made this a smooth surface, we would not have that problem. And I'm not sure if Hori designed this on purpose to be grippy. I mean, if you're a player that kind of rotate, then it's perfect, right? It's very grippy. Your thumb won't slip in and out. But I'm not that kind of player, so this is not going to work for me. So while we're here, let's test out the thumbstick here. Ooh. Hey. Ooh. Ooh, the thumbstick's good. Look at that, I'm able to do this a lot more consistently. Alright, so if you're having trouble with the surface of the D-pad and you're playing Zangief, then the thumbstick is a pretty viable option. By the way, the thumbstick has a lot of resistance, so you can flick it pretty good. Look at that. This is a really nice thumbstick. Yeah, compared to the PlayStation one, this one is pretty weak. And the Xbox One is the weakest of them all. Flicky flicky action. Look at this. For the first time ever, I'm gonna say it's actually viable for you to play fighting games using the thumbstick. This thumbstick is impressive. And by the way, unlike the D-pad, the surface of the thumbstick here, you want that to be rough and grippy, right? So going back and forth here is not gonna slip out of your thumb. It's so funny. I'm able to execute moves better with the thumbstick than the D-pad. Wow. Alright, my first impression of this controller is I love everything about it except for the surface of the D-pad, which is kind of a deal breaker. But if you are a rotator, then you're perfectly fine. And it's such a shame because everything about this controller is so good. Oh man, it's such a shame. I had so much hope for this controller. Just one tiny wrong decision here and it kind of ruins the whole thing. Yeah, if only this thing is smooth, then we're golden. We have a perfect Fightpad. But now we don't. Alright, let's talk about the app now. So you go to the Microsoft Store, go to search, and put in Hori. Okay, this is the app you want to download. Hori Device Manager for Xbox. Alright, just go ahead and download it and launch it. And this is how the app looks like. This app is really designed for the consoles, so the best way to navigate through this is to use your controller. It's not really designed to use with the mouse, but you can in some cases, but most of the time you navigate using the D-pad. So here you have 4 profiles, right? I have named the first one DOA, the second one Street Fighter, and so on and so forth. So we're going to focus on this profile here. So to make changes, go here and click on edit. Alright, we'll go to button mapping in a little bit here, but I want to go to the D-pad settings first. So what the D-pad settings do here is actually adjusting your D-pad sensitivity, right? By default, balance mode is enabled, right? So to make changes, just go ahead and turn this off, right? And notice there's a little dot here, right? So you can use your D-pad up and down to navigate to each of these corners, I guess, right? What I want to do is I don't want the corners here to activate at all. I'm going to choose that corner, and instead of using your D-pad, use the stick, right? And then press, I guess, down left. Oh, actually, before you do that, so press A to select it, and then use the thumbstick, okay, to go all the way in. Okay, so we're gonna back out of there. We're gonna select this one. So now you see how only the up, down, left, right buttons are activated, right? The diagonal inputs are pretty much disabled. Under audio settings, you have options for volume, mic sensitivity. You can mute the volume or mute the mic. And you also have controls over the mixers here too. Alright, we're not gonna mess with that. Now let's go back to button mapping. Okay, I'm gonna just come out and say it. This is terrible. This is just absolutely atrocious. Okay, check this out. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in here by pressing A to remap my buttons. Alright. Okay, so by default, the left trigger is the right stick button. The left shoulder button is defaulted to the left stick button. Now what if I want to move these to these buttons right here and have the defaults here be the left trigger and the right trigger? Guess what? There's no way to do that. Alright, check this out. So I click on here and then I'm going to click left trigger. Alright, easy enough. And then left button. Okay, so now we have that assigned, and then I want to have the right button and the right trigger to be mapped over here. Check out what happens when I do that, okay? So I'm gonna click on here to do the right trigger, bam. Look at that, what the hell is that? Alright, I'm gonna click on here, right shoulder, look at that. That's just crazy. Now what if I go like this? Okay, I'm gonna disable all of these guys. I don't want to use these buttons. I just want to use left trigger, left button, right trigger, right button, right? Check this out. Left trigger. You see that? What the hell is this? Okay, right trigger. Look at that. Left button, right button. It just, so it's pretty much impossible to reassign this button to the default Xbox controller layout, essentially. Well, the good news is this is pretty much just a software update to do this. Hopefully they'll be able to iron this out soon, but right now it's pretty much unusable for me. It's just a total disaster. Alright, hopefully you find the video to be informative and helpful. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Take care.